Today I am going to discuss the complications and lab diagnosis of gonococcal infection. We have already done disseminated gonococcal disease in the previous lecture and are now left with pelvic inflammatory diseases and ophthalmia neonatorum. In females, pelvic inflammatory disease involves the peritoneal cavity and all the abdominal organs which are lying over there, like the liver, spleen, etc. The infection starts with the introduction of gonococci in the vagina after sexual contact. From here, it is going to move onto the cervix, go to the uterus, and the organism finally enter the fallopian tubes. They cause inflammation of the fallopian tubes, and from the fallopian tube, if you look at this diagram, from the inflamed fallopian tubes, the organisms are then dropped down into the peritoneal cavity, and that is known as seeding of the peritoneal cavity, and it's going to lead to pelvic inflammatory diseases. These organisms are non-motile, so they are going to get attached to the sperm and then they are carried to the fallopian tube. They are going to bring about inflammation of the fallopian tubes, and this results in either complete or partial obstruction of these tubes, leading to sterility or ectopic pregnancy. Whenever the fallopian tubes are infected, this is going to produce scars, and the scars are responsible for constriction of the tubes, leading to blockade of these tubes, and hence there is going to be sterility. The other symptoms associated with pelvic inflammatory disease are like fever. The patient presents with leukocytosis. Salpingitis is inflammation of the tubes. Peritonitis is inflammation of the peritoneal cavity. There could be pelvic abscesses, and the final result is sterility. In males, on the other hand, gonococcal infection causes inflammation of the tip of the urethra, and from here they are going to be carried to the vas deferens, and from the vas deferens they enter the epididymis and the testes. And again, there's going to be inflammatory reaction. There's marked inflammation leading to the scar formation and sterility. When the infection is there in the urethra, there's going to be obstruction of the urethra leading to dysuria, and all signs and symptoms of urinary tract infection would be seen. Prostatic abscesses as well as orchitis have been seen in this with this pathogen, and this leads to sterility of the individual. Infection in children are very important. Two types of infections have been observed. One, infections which are seen in the neonates, and this is in form of neonatal conjunctivitis, and the other name for this is ophthalmia neonatorum. This is something very important. You're asked about it in your exam. You get an MCQ on it. You can get a part of the SCQ on this part. Children are generally who are infected are generally older than 1 year, and they are infected because of sexual abuse, and they generally present with pharyngitis, rectal infection, or there may be eye infections. Now, what is ophthalmia neonatorum? It's a very serious condition due to transmission of gonococci from infected mother to the newborn infant during delivery, and it is going to lead to destructive eye lesions. There is going to be destruction of the eye leading to blindness, and mothers may be symptomatic or they are asymptomatic, but they do have these organisms in their vaginal canal. Transmission is through the infected birth canal, and within 2 to 3 days, as you can see in this picture, the child or the neonate is going to present with sticky purulent discharge. Treatment is known as Creed's procedure, and you either put 1% silver nitrate solution or 0.5% erythrocin immediately after birth. Within 1 hour of birth, you have to give this treatment to prevent the final complication, which is blindness of the child. So to prevent blindness in child, you have to put either 1% silver nitrate solution or 0.5% erythromycin 1 hour after birth. This slide is showing you the various complications of gonococci, which we have already discussed. With disseminated infections, there could be this polyarticular tenosynovitis. We have done this in detail, or there could be skin lesions as you see over here. There is papule or hemorrhagic pustules develop from this papule, or there could be carditis, involvement of the heart valve. The organisms may go and settle down in the large joints, producing arthritis. Whereas with local spread, there is obviously there is genital gonorrhea. So in females, there is going to be scarring of the fallopian tubes, resulting in ectopic pregnancies or in complete sterility. In males, on the other hand, it's going to produce epididymitis, or there could be this prostatic abscesses. Now, coming to the laboratory diagnosis, which is very important, we generally get a question on lab diagnosis of Neisseria gonorrhoeae or even Neisseria meningitidis is equally important. So, day one is where you're going to collect the samples, and the samples can be collected from females, males, and infants. The sites in females are the cervix, rectum, or the urethra, whereas in males it is the throat or the urethra or rectum. Infants, we get eye swabs. Transport is very important because this is a very fastidious organism, and it is going to die if it is not immediately transported to the laboratory. So in case of delay, you have to put it in some transport media, and that is either Stewart's transport media, or you're going to utilize Amy's transport media. We have talked about direct inoculation on the plates, which means that the sample is collected and inoculated at the place of where it is collected. Immediately after collected, whether it is in the hospital or in the theater, the plates are readily available there, and the sample is immediately inoculated on the plates, and this is known as direct plating. Direct microscopy is very important. We have been discussing about the presumptive diagnosis, which is based on the direct microscopic examination, and on on gram staining, you're going to observe the intracellular gram-negative kidney-shaped diplococci. And then day one, you're going to inoculate the specimen on different media, chocolate agar and Thierin-Martin media. This modified Thierin-Martin media is the selective media for Neisseria gonorrhoeae, because you're going to add vancomycin, colistin, and nystatin, different antibiotics added, which are going to inhibit the growth of the commensals which are at the site from which you have taken the sample. For example, if it is throat, obviously other organisms are also sitting over there. Similarly, high vaginal swabs, there are many other commensals present in the vagina or the skin. The commensals are there. So we are going to add vancomycin, colistin, and nystatin, which are going to inhibit these normal commensals and will only allow the pathogens to grow. This is another slide showing you both these intracellular and extracellular gram-negative diplococci, and you can see a large number of pus cells as well on the slide. Day two is the day where you're going to interpret the colonies, and then from these colonies you're going to perform various bench tests and biochemical reactions. So on chocolate agar, you see these raised transparent colonies, and Thierin-Martin media are going to produce large mucoid colonies. And then you perform the various biochemical tests and bench tests. Oxidase test and catalytic tests are positive for this pathogen, as it was for Neisseria meningitidis. Now, beta-lactamase production is something done for, this is a test which is done for Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and it is positive. And then you're going to perform the rapid carbohydrate fermentation test, which you did for Neisseria meningitidis, and in this case, it's just glucose which is fermented with acid formation. So we are going to discuss each of these tests separately now. This slide is showing you both chocolate agar and modified Thierin-Martin media. Chocolate agar is not a selective media for this organism, because as you can see over here, all types of bacteria from the site has grown on this medium, so it is very difficult to identify Neisseria gonorrhoeae. We can do it if we just pour oxidase reagent on it. Some of these colonies will turn purple, and if we perform a gram staining, we will be able to identify Neisseria gonorrhoeae. On the other hand, Thierin-Martin media is only for Neisseria meningitidis and Neisseria gonorrhoeae. And as you can see, if you can make out, visualize these tiny colonies on this medium, this is these colonies of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and the sample is a rectal swab. From rectal swab, all fecal contaminants will grow on chocolate media but not on Thayer and Martin media, where you're only going to isolate either Neisseria meningitidis or Neisseria gonorrhoeae. Now, this slide is showing you the growth on Thayer and Martin media. So you will only observe the growth of Neisseria gonorrhoeae or Neisseria meningitidis. Even the normal Neisseria species like Flaviscens, Zika, Subflava, etc. cannot grow on Thayer and Martin media. So it is a highly selective media for these pathogens. Now, if we get a growth on Thayer and Martin media, we are going to perform glucose fermentation test and maltose fermentation test. If only glucose is fermented, then it is Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and if both glucose and maltose are fermented, then it is Neisseria meningitidis. And in my previous lecture, I told you the best way to remember is that G is for gonorrhoeae and M is for meningitidis. So if it fermenting if it is fermenting maltose, not mannitol, maltose. If it is fermenting maltose, it is meningitidis, and if it is fermenting just glucose, it is Neisseria gonorrhoeae. These organisms are also oxidase positive. We have discussed oxidase test several times, so I'm not going to go into the details. So if they are oxidase positive, as you can see over here on the slide, they produce a purple color, so they are oxidase positive. Then we have to again pick up those colonies which are oxidase positive and confirm it by doing a gram staining. And on gram staining, we will be able to identify the gram negative diplococci. Beta-lactamase test is done again for Neisseria gonorrhoeae. It is in this test, the indicator used here is bromocresol purple, and you're going to take a piece of filter paper, add penicillin on it, and add a drop of this reagent to it. So this purplish paper has penicillin plus it has bromocresol purple indicator. Now pick up well isolated colonies of gonococci from the plate and smudge it on this filter paper. If the organism are GCs and they are producing beta-lactamase, they will break down penicillin into penicilloic acid, and they are going to produce this yellow color. So this is filter paper to which we have added penicillin plus bromocresol purple. If the organism is producing beta-lactamase, this will go and act on penicillin, and it is going to convert this penicillin into penicilloic acid, and you will get this yellow color indicating that beta-lactamase production is there and the test is positive. And Neisseria gonorrhoeae are going to produce beta-lactamase. Not all Neisseria gonorrhoeae, but some of the species are going to do that. Coming to catalase test, this organism is also catalase positive. Again, we have done this test several times. You're going to put a drop of hydrogen peroxide on the slide, add well isolated colonies to it, and they will start bubbling if catalase is positive. Rapid carbohydrate test is very important for to differentiate between Neisseria meningitidis and Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and the indicator used here is phenol red. You are asked about it as this is basically part of your OSFEs as well, and you are asked about it in your table viva. So the indicator here is phenol red, and when you take well isolated colonies of Neisseria gonorrhoeae or Neisseria meningitidis, you're going to mix it with this sugar solution and keep it incubated for a specific period of time, and then you're going to look for the change in color. If it becomes yellow in color in the presence of indicator phenol red, then it means that the sugar has been utilized or has been fermented. With Neisseria gonorrhoeae, only glucose is going to become yellow, but with meningitidis, both glucose and maltose become yellow in color, indicating that the sugar has been fermented. Then we also perform a variety of serological tests and nucleic acid tests to identify Neisseria gonorrhoeae, and one of them is ELISA test. so for which we are going to take urethral swabs or cervical swabs. We can also do a direct fluorescent antibody test where you're going to use fluorescent monoclonal antibodies against gonococci, and you can see gonococci fluorescing or emitting green light. PCR is done. The most sensitive test is PCR polymerase chain reaction, where you're going to detect the gonococcal genome. Nucleic acid amplification test or NAT test, we have already discussed this while we were doing chlamydia. And for performing NAT test, you can take either vaginal swabs or the urine swabs as we did with chlamydia. So, to summarize the diagnostic test, number one are the swabs which you are going to take. The best are the rectal or the endocervical swab. Then you do a direct microscopy by performing gram staining, and you're going to see gram-negative intracellular diplococci. You're going to inoculate the sample on various culture media, but the selective media is the one which contains antibiotics like the Thayer and Martin media we have already discussed. And then you're going to perform NAT test or nucleic acid hybridization test. So what is the difference between Neisseria gonorrhoeae and meningitis? You are asked about in your exam. You can also get this as part of your SCQ. Portal of entry is different. Gonorrhea is from the genital tract, whereas meningitis enters via the respiratory tract. Polysaccharide capsule is very important for Neisseria meningitidis. It is generally absent in gonorrhea, or it is very fine and rarely seen. And with meningitis, I told you that 13 serotypes have been identified on the basis of its capsule. Beta-lactamase is produced by some of Neisseria gonorrhoeae, whereas with meningitis it is always negative. Acid from maltose is a characteristic feature of meningitis and not seen with gonorrhea. Vaccine, we have talked about the vaccines produced against Neisseria meningitidis, but there is no vaccine against gonorrhea so far. Coming to your assignments, again you have to attempt all the MCQs before you mark yourself present, and then you mail the answered SCQ within 2 days of this lecture. The first SCQ is a 28 years old sex worker presenting with excessive vaginal discharge and irregular bleed, and you see gram-negative intracellular diplococci. So in this SCQ, the examiner has asked you the diagnosis, the pathogenesis, and how will you diagnose this case in this lab, what are the complications, and what is ophthalmia neonatal. So in other words, everything which we have discussed about Neisseria gonorrhoeae is important from your examination point of view. The MCQ is on ophthalmia neonatal, and you have to pick up the correct option or the answer, and the second one is regarding the lab diagnosis, which of the media would be most likely used for isolation of the suspected organism, which is an intracellular gram-negative diplococci. So with this, we are done with all the sexually transmitted diseases, and next time, inshallah, we'll move on to some other.